Let me start it.
Tell him I want my money, I want my money, yeah, right now. Tell him I need my money, I need my money, yeah, right now. Cause I want to be rich like I live in Dubai. Everybody got to live so nice. Yeah, you have your money and I have mine, mine, oh. I want to be rich like I live in Dubai. Everybody got to live so nice. Yeah, you have your money and I have mine, mine, oh.
Hey, hi folks, good evening. Thank you so much for joining me. Hey, let me set this thing up so I can see comments. Right. We sorted. Hi Carla, hi Javon, hi Hazel, hi Patrice, hi Mervyn, hi Gemma. How y'all doing? I gather that Friday evening was, a little bit nerve-wracking for people. Hi Monife, Gemma, Anne, Jazzy, Janisha. Yeah, that whole tech situation, caused a lot of stress. And what's the fun part about all of that? Well, not really fun. I'm being a little sarcastic. Tech guy was none the wiser about any of it. So on my end, there were no tech problems at all. On my end, everything was running fine. I was seeing everybody's comments. The recording was going good. But it was on your end, you weren't, things were stuttering and sticking, and I'm not sure why. We haven't been able to determine why. But tech guy was off on his own beat. So Saturday morning when I'm talking to him, I'm like, what is really went on there? He's like, what? Something happened? And I'm like, did you not notice that the live was done in 2 parts? So, you see, all the tech guy acolytes and tech guy fanatics. Let me let all you know, Friday evening, tech guy wasn't even taking us on, right? He was off doing his thing. But he come through for me today with this poster. I'm not gonna lie. I will get up and I will message tech guy. Hi Naveed, nice to see you. Hi Debbie, Carla, evening everybody. So I get up. Well, since yesterday I telling tech guy, I'm like, it's like 2 or 3 things that are playing around within my head that I'd like to do for the live on Sunday evening. But when I get up Sunday morning, I'll tell you for absolute certainty which one it is, right? So I get up and I'm saying to him, it hit me. Last week we talked about poverty. And there are ways in which I talked about poverty last week and how poverty works. And I need to talk this week about how wealth works. So I was like, play with the idea. We're looking at wealth and how wealth works. And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. And then this is what comes through. And I'm like, tech guy has me winning all the time. But every single flyer he got choose violence for. Like every single flyer. So this t-shirt isn't original to me. This is actually the Bocas Lit Fest. This is a t-shirt. I wonder if I've got the logo on the back of their logo. Should be on the back of my t-shirt. It also should be on one of the shoulders, but it's not on one of the shoulders. So if you go to their Facebook page, Bocas Lit Fest, these are one of their t-shirts, and you can ask them if they've got t-shirts available. They have this in black and in white, because I believe I've got one of each. I've got a black t-shirt, I've got a white t-shirt, and they have a range. Some that will say the plot thickens, some that says literature made me do it. I'll read yours if you read mine. Readers wanted, writers wanted. They've got a range of t-shirts. And I've gone to their literary festival from the very first year that it happened. It happens right here in Trinidad and Tobago, by the way. And each year I go, I buy t-shirts. So I have about easily 9 or 10, because each year I buy like 2 t-shirts. So easily 9 or 10 t-shirts from them, and that's what I tend to wear. I recycle the t-shirts left, right, and center because I love the the slogans on them. Yes, Imran, I agree with you. I have to start selling some merchandise, but what you need to remember is you need to be a little bit patient with me. Most of this I'm handling for myself. Setting up the studio, pulling together the content, running everything that happens here, and then after that I have my regular day in life. So it's usually for me to just kind of find time and sit down and organize a couple things and then deploy, what I need to deploy. So I'll get around to it, and I will make sure that there's lots of merch for you all to be able to purchase. Because, for instance, I think this poster, I'm pointing here because my monitor is on this side, but you guys are seeing this. This poster needs to be on a cup. As soon as I saw it, not with the handwriting on it, right? But just with Zessanomics. I said to Tech Guy, I want this on a mug. I feel like this this flyer on a mug, this is fire. This is pure fire. So a couple things happened between yesterday and today. Last night I spent the evening hanging out with Devant Mirage. You all know Devant. Devant has been on the program a couple times. Spent the evening hanging out with him because it was his last evening in Trinidad and Tobago. He headed off to Canada, so his flight took off already. I saw footage of the flight taking off, so I have evidence that he got onto the flight and that the flight took off. And it was an interesting evening. It was an interesting evening in that I think you know that he and I weren't particularly keen on each other. I certainly was not keen on him. And with respect to the UNC having lost the general elections in 2020, I reached out and asked him if he was willing to have a conversation to talk about what was going on with the United National Congress. And we've had a couple conversations here. And part of what he and I have discussed offline that we tried to encourage online was for people to see, Trinidadians and Tobagonians to see, that you don't have to agree with each other to treat each other civilly. You don't have to even like each other to treat each other with respect. Now, over the year or so that he and I have been talking, because we would have started talking in 2020 and the conversation continued into 2021 and now into 2022, we continue to be respectful of each other even when we disagree, to the point where, we can actively disagree on any number of issues to do with politics, culture, religion, whatever it is, but we don't have to be name calling and we don't have to be at each other's throats, and we also don't have to be blaming each other and ascribing all sorts of nasty slurs and nasty allegations against each other just to win points, to score points, because point scoring is, absolutely futile. So he's traveled. He's going to be, trying to set up his life in another part of the world. And there are lots of different reasons he's traveling abroad to set up his life in another part of the world. And I don't feel that it's my right or responsibility to explain all of those things to you. Maybe if at any point in time he's willing to join me on the live here, on the program here, we will have a conversation about his choices to migrate. So I will ask him if he wants to do that. But there are a range of issues, and we all have a wide range of issues that we would decide to stay or decide to go. For me, my part, I continue to make the decision to stay because this is my country. And I'm not allowing anybody at all to feel that they could run me out of this space. My family, my ancestors' blood, sweat, and tears in this soil. So until I start thinking that my needs are greater than their blood, sweat, and tears, then I'm here. So I'm here for the foreseeable future. So I'm going to ease all up from seeing Sabda Totots for a little bit and shift to a little different, something a little different. This morning I woke up to the news that songstress Lata Mangeshkar, who had an incredibly important role in my growing up, because where I grew up in central Trinidad, we was listening to Indian music all the time, especially Indian film music all the time. If it's not playing on your TV, on TTT on a Sunday, it playing off somebody radio or something like that. So Lata Mangeshkar has passed and gone on into the next life. But I wanted to, just pay a little tribute to Lata Mangeshkar now, because she was a big deal, an absolute big deal, certainly for me. So plenty of you would know the movie Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge. You all should know that movie. That was a big movie back in the 90s. Huge. If you did not know that movie, and if you don't know Lata Mangeshkar, I need to check your passport. Like, seriously, you need to check your passport. Because I feel like most Trinidadians from the 70s, 80s, and 90s know who she is. So you must know this song. Now, Dilwale is a movie where I fall in love with Shah Rukh Khan. I'm not going to lie. I like Shah Rukh Khan. Bad. So, that was one of the songs. But there's a song that we would know her name from long before Dilwale. And I had to lower the volume on my system for this, because this song tends to be a little bit on the long side and on the loud side. But you all must know this. You all must know this song. Tell me.
She said stop, Ricky stop. She said holy Lata Mangeshkar, me soka, holy Lata Mangeshkar, give me soka, tickle me with her, love way, soka me till I say, holy Lata Mangeshkar, give me soka, how na girl?
Listen, that song bad, you know. That song real bad. Ricky Jai could mash up a fet with that song. Today. Let me fix my sound. I had to lower the sound on the system here because of how loud it is on YouTube. Sumindra is one of the baddest songs ever. I put on this thing today and I was like, wait. Ricky Jai even understand how wicked that tune was, boy. Jeez, on ages. We had some real good music back in the 80s. I ain't gonna lie. We had some real good music back in the 80s. Amitabh Bachchan, yes, I was like hardcore Amitabh Bachchan when I was a child, like, you know, small so. Even up into my teens, and then after that, Dilwale and Shah Rukh. Whew, yes, boy. Lado. Right. So I just wanted to take a minute to say, you know, condolences to Lata's family, and we lost a big one. I mean, she was 92, so probably age, etc., and she did have a huge contribution to make to culture in general, globally, and of course here in the Caribbean, where we would have had lots of East Indian descendants, and of course because East Indian descended people were here and they brought their culture here, the rest of us who are not East Indian descended had the opportunity to experience the culture and experience Lata's beautiful voice. You have to, you know, you can't deny that she has a really, really beautiful voice, right? Yeah, that's what I heard. She contracted COVID. So, boy, COVID is a hot mess, yes? And as we're talking about hot messes, there's this story that was in the papers today that got me very annoyed because of course it's linked to the healthcare system. This story got me very annoyed. I saw it and I said to myself, this is why we have a government. We have a government so that when things like this happen to citizens, they don't have to end up going to the newspaper and putting all the business in the road to force the state to do the right thing. This lady went into the public healthcare system, and the public healthcare system botched her body up. It is not the first time we have had reports like this, and I mean, just last week we were talking about how underfunding healthcare and having persons within the healthcare system not do their jobs properly are one of the ways that you can push people into poverty. Now here you have this lady whose she put her body in the care of medical practitioners, of state medical practitioners, right? So imagine you take your good self, put your body in the hands of medical practitioners here. They do the wrong thing. They mess you up, and then after that, you have to now go and spread all your business to the media to hope that media will be able to pressure the state into doing the right thing. That shouldn't happen. Number one, the moment that happened, the state should have reassured the woman and ensured that whatever corrective surgery needed to take place took place, because that's malpractice. That's what it is. Plain and simple. It is malpractice. And the doctor who do that piece of nonsense, his name should be in the public domain as having done what he did, and he should be sued. Now the thing is, if he has to be sued by her, she probably don't have the resources to sue the doctor. I feel quite certain, if you are doing surgery in the public healthcare system, then chances are your pocket ain't heavy enough, your pocket ain't fat enough to allow you to be able to take on a lawyer to sue the state. And so that doctor is probably being protected right now after having done a piece of foolishness. And I'm telling you, it is not the first time that we have read stories or we have heard stories about medical doctors here in the public healthcare system doing things to undermine their profession. This is unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable. And the Minister of Health ought to come out and issue some sort of statement on this. We need to know, we need to know that the woman's issues are being addressed. And I feel quite certain it's not a case where the state or the Ministry of Health does not know. I feel quite certain they do know. But they have been giving the lady the runaround, because you know the public sector good at that. So she has probably been getting runaround after runaround after runaround. So she ends up using her last resort, going to media so that they run a story so that people name get scandalized. And I really feel that we should find out who was the doctor. Simone, if it is true that no doctor in the public healthcare system can be personally sued, then surely the state in and of itself can be sued. There has to be an entity that can be held accountable for what has happened to the woman. So if it's not the doctor who can be sued, then it would have to be the RHA. And my take on that is it has to be a situation where she does not have the money to actually sue the RHA. Plus, if she has the money, her most urgent need will be to fix herself. Lie, you go pour on somebody. Lie, you say, you know. So I saw that story this morning. I was stunned. Absolutely stunned. This lady, the lady should not have to be going through this. Not at all. So that was that. So, boy, where are we? Last week, we would have talked about princesses and paupers. We talked about poverty last week, right? Again, another brilliant poster from Tech Guy. Tech Guy just, he just staying winning. So we talked about poverty last week. And you know what occurred to me? It occurred to me that last week, when I talked about poverty, we didn't look at the flip side to the information. So I would have indicated to you that based on a UN report, 4.2% of the population falls below the poverty line. Hi, Alana Morton. Morning. What I didn't think about was if I looked at the other side of the coin. So if 4.2% of our population falls below the poverty line, what percentage of our population is above the poverty line? And when I thought about it, I was like, that had to be 95.8%. So we live in a country where 95.8% of the population is above the poverty line. But most of us who are above the poverty line are coping, enduring doing okay. Some people might be comfortable, but we don't have a large portion of our society here that, from a financial perspective, would be considered wealthy. The wealthy tend to be a small portion at the top. So I went looking for some data. I didn't find data about us here, but I did find global data. So according to this report from Statista, a Credit Suisse report indicates that 45.8% of the world's wealth. Let me go and pull up the images on this end so I can look at it while I'm looking at you, like deep in your eyes. I want to be able to look deep in your eyes. So according to a Credit Suisse report, 45.8% of the global household wealth is in the hands of 1.1% of the world's population. And I guess that's where we get that whole idea of the 1% versus the 99% from. Now, I don't ascribe to calling any particular ethnic group or immigrant group in this country the 1%. I don't. But I am going to be talking about wealthy persons in this society and how wealthy persons become wealthy. Now, this is the global pyramid of wealth here. And you will see that up at the top, 1.1% of the world makes about anywhere between 11.1% of the world makes anywhere between 100,000 to $1 million a year. 1.1% of the population making over $1 million a year. And then you've got people who are making between $10,000 to $100,000 a year are about 32.8%. And the majority of the world's population, 55%, are making less than $10,000 a year. So you have those figures there, those statistics to help you get a sense of who is making how much money on a regular basis. And then, of course, we know that the persons who are making, who are below the poverty line, they are surviving on about $1.95 a day. So less than $2 US a day. That's what they're surviving on. So in thinking about, in reading, and thinking about wealth and how I wanted to talk about wealth, I struck upon this. Wealth and wealth making in this part of the world, the new world, and of course, making money in the new world, of course, is tied directly back to the old world, has always ever been a Ponzi scheme. And that's what inspired the use of Second Star's Dubai to kick off today's program. Because we have seen for the last 500 plus years, people turn wrong, having no resources of their own, and saying to somebody else, hey, give me money to be able to do this or invest in this and I will make you wealthy. So it starts with Columbus. And what we don't always recognize is that Columbus and mercantilism and colonization and colonialism and enslavement, all of those things are part of one big Ponzi scheme. Thereafter, once you've ended enslavement and you move into colonial society and post-enslavement society, the Ponzi scheme continues with people deciding, I might have some land, but the land ain't really worth anything, so give me some advance money, advance me some cash, and I'm going to use it to be able to generate more money, to generate an investment. And also, I'm banking on my complexion and I'm banking on my connections to be able to generate funds. So, in looking at how colonization occurred, and also looking at how Trinidad and Tobago society has evolved over the last 200 years and emerged, and also in looking at DSS, right, that DSS Susu, I decided, okay, we're going to look at ways in which people go about, or how people go about getting wealthy, right? How they get rich quick. So let's start with how people get rich quick. So the first thing you have to do is set up a group, a club, or an organization that you'll be able to lead for life. So once you have something like, say, the royal family, right? You have some organization that you could set up and lead for life and ensure that how things hand down from one generation to the next generation is through birth, right of birth, through your family ties and stuff. That's one way, or that's the main way of beginning to establish wealth. Because you all know how here started, right? The royals and them decided to fund Columbus, and Columbus shows up here with other Europeans, of course, and they take what is not theirs and they exploit what is not theirs to exploit. And that's one of the key things that you need to remember. If you want to get rich, exploitation is key to wanting to get rich. So you start up with a family, right? And you make sure that your family running, and that your family has resources, that your family is controlling the resources, and the way in which the family continues to be controlling resources is through things like inheritance, heir. When I say heir, H-E-I-R, it passing down from generation to generation. So whether or not you are actually the best person to be leading or running a corporation, you have the opportunity to run a corporation or run a country and benefit off the assets of a country based on your birthright. And so once you are doing things like that, it means that you are ensuring that you keep the money and you keep the wealth within the family, right? So you ensure that those things remain within the family. Good. People who don't understand juxtaposition, you're gonna have a rough time this evening, right? So ensuring that you have a family and that you can keep things within the family and things pass on from one generation to the next generation within that family, that's one of the key ways to ensure that you become wealthy. And we have a nice term for it. It's called generational wealth. And nobody ever admits that how they went about getting the generational wealth was more likely than not through things like exploitation. So the next step now is resources. Where are you getting the resources from? So you look for resources, you and your group, right? Whether it's your family or whichever group. So you and your group sit down and you decide, okay, we don't have anything really in we pockets. We have nothing, as a matter of fact. So let's see where have or who have, and figure out ways to go and get these resources and exploit these resources. And the resources could be anything. The resources could be land. It could be things that are in the earth itself. It could be gold, it could be silver, it could be diamonds. You could decide that lines 1 to 12 have resources, as in they have $1,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 that they could invest, or rather that you could take from them. But how you take it from them is by using words like invest, right? But you don't ever show them that this is what they get in terms, they have nothing tangible to get beyond a promise. So you say to them, we have this system. Come and give us, come and invest $10, $20, $30,000 of your money in us. We have no money to put back there for you, but we have this incredible idea that will allow you to get back way more than you invested. And so you have this whole pyramid going. And it's kind of like what Columbus would have done with Isabel and Ferdinand. Because Columbus had nothing but a vision and a dream. He get the crown to fund his vessels and to fund the crew for him. And the crew reached quite here and he land up on land. And he then decided to be able to let them know that their investment was not a bad investment, that they didn't actually waste their money investing. He exploited the resources that he found, whether it was people, whether it was the land itself, looking for gold, looking for silver. And in some instances, people go and exploit things like water. Imagine that. Imagine in a country, you would go and figure out how you could exploit water. Something that, because it's there underground, land that would be state land, you would think that water here would belong to everybody. You would also think that the laws here that say you're not supposed to capture rainwater and dig well for water and thing without approval, you would think to yourself that something would be wrong, illegal, if not unethical, to have a company be able to exploit water. Anyhow, let's get back to talking about resources and how things just happen. So imagine you're in a position where you could exploit water, right? And you are exploiting water, bottling water, and water that people already get in, state water, right? Like water that the whole country is sitting down on top of, that people are already paying for in their taps because it's passing through the water authority, coming into your taps. You then turn around and leave your house and walk to a store or walk to a shop and you pay for that same water again that has passed through another filtration process, but it's water that technically belongs to the state. And if we really and truly thinking that we are part of the state, you're there asking yourself, well, how is it that we also getting water in the tap, but then we're going out and paying for our own artisan water from our wells that in a bottle? So are we paying for the water or are we paying for the bottle? And so this is a question that I have for myself all the time. Am I paying for the water or am I paying for the bottle? And so years ago, when I started asking myself these hard questions, because it's not now I asking myself these questions, right? It might be now I asking the questions in front of all you. When I realized that what I really paying for is for the label and the plastic bottle, which in truth and in fact is garbage, is trash, as in it causes me to generate garbage and trash, I stopped buying water. I was like, huh? I stopped buying water. I only have water from the tap. Punto final. I pass it through my filter and I have water from my tap. Because as far as I'm concerned, based on our laws here, we have laws that actually say people ain't supposed to be digging well and they ain't supposed to be catching rainwater, you know. I don't even know that. All right? You ain't supposed to be doing that based on legislation we have here. So when I saw this and when I started thinking deeply about this, I said to myself, I'm not going to be paying for water twice because I done paying a WASA bill every quarter. I have a WASA bill in my name, so I pay for water every quarter. And I have good water coming in my taps. I am trying to boast, and I think, put pressure on WASA and them to be given better quality water. When people start to complain about the quality, the caliber of water they're getting in the taps, I deal with them. I deal with all you. I ready to donate tire for it to burn that tire in front of Wassa so that you could get better water in your taps. Because when you start getting better water in your taps, you wouldn't feel the need to go and buy the same water in a plastic bottle. Punto final. I see Katie is asking who wrote that law. Katie, that's a real old law. As a matter of fact, laws like that were written to ensure that people could not be self-sufficient. Water is an important resource for self-sufficiency. So if people are generating, digging for producing their own water, like sourcing water from underground for themselves, do they even need the state? Right? So you have to think about that. You have to think about things like electricity. If you, Katie, don't need electricity, water, Wi-Fi from the state, or you don't have to get that from any company, do you actually even need a government? And that's what you need to think about, that these laws, these things are created to ensure that there's dependency, that the people within a country remain dependent on, right? So that's right. So rule number two, this is linked to rule number 2. Find resources that don't belong to you and then claim them and exploit them as best as you can. What you also need to do when you are finding these resources that don't belong to you and you're claiming them, you need to make sure that you set up other departments and divisions that are doing things that are beneficial to the society, so that way you could continue to exploit the resource, but people will be so focused on the other things that you're doing, they will say, okay, all right, we ain't gonna kick up too much fuss about the exploitation of these other resources because this company or this entity or this, this group of these business people are providing me with services that are quite useful. So you need to make sure that you have a narrative going when you start to exploit resources. You need to have a narrative that basically says, yes, I'm exploiting resources, but I'm also doing good things in other spheres. And one of the really good mantras that you could be repeating as much as possible is that you're creating jobs, and not just creating jobs for single mothers. Because let me tell you something. You see this whole business of creating jobs, we fall every single time for people saying, well, it's creating jobs. And you see, if you could turn around and say, you're creating jobs for single mothers, then all of the evil that you're doing gets put aside because you are creating jobs for single mothers. Because all of a sudden, everybody just start to hear that violin solo in their head, right? That single violin solo and that single tear that start to run down their face because, oh, we creating jobs for single mothers. Even though that company that is exploiting resources probably paying those single mothers less than minimum wage, right? So let's not forget that. So let's run through the steps thus far. 1, set up a group or club or organization that you can lead for life. 2, find resources that don't belong to you and exploit them. Let's now go on to step number 3. Step number 3, create either a religion or an ideology to establish that what you are doing is not just legal but right. You want an ideology and you want people to buy into an ideology and you want people to buy into the exploitation that you are doing, and you want them to think that this is right, this is okay. So let's use the DSS example. DSS pitched everybody their susu, in quotation marks, by promoting this whole ideology of pulling black people out of wealth. Mind you, is the self-same black people they were exploiting, but they sold their susu with the whole idea of, we come in, we take in your, You are investing your money in us, right? Investing your money in us. And when you invest your money in us, you are going to be leading a life of abundance and prosperity, and you ain't ever have to be dealing up with poverty and catching your ass ever again. Tell line 13 that now. Line 13, 14, and 15. Ask them how things going. Ask them how things going. So create a religion around your exploitation, or create an ideology around your exploitation. And do you know why religion and ideology is important? Because you want to have a situation where people feel emotionally invested in your exploitation. Because if they're not emotionally invested in your exploitation, they might stop and start to think. That is what might take place. Because you see, when you have people swept up and caught up in emotion, they're not going to be thinking, hey, take my money. You say you're going to make me wealthy. You say you're going to pull me out of poverty. Hey, take my money. That's what is going to take place. Or let's use the colonization example. You get Catholicism to create a whole narrative and story about how indigenous people and African descended people need to be civilized, need to be brought to the Lord, need to have their souls saved because their souls trapped in darkness. Mind you, both Africa and the indigenous peoples of the New World had their whole religious systems. They all had entire religious systems, their own worldview. But you see, you can't turn around and justify to people that they are exploiting, killing, raping, maiming other people. Because Africans and indigenous people, we look like people. We are people. We's whole people. So you need to have people buy into their exploitation from an emotional and ideological level. So you pitch the idea that these people aren't people. One, they're subhuman. And because they're subhuman, it means that whatever it is happened to them, they deserve. And we're really and truly trying to pull them up out of the state, the subhuman state that they're in. Unfortunately, we have people who leave one side of the world around the 1900s, pick up themselves, come here to escape conflict in that part of the world. And when they reach here, they settled, started businesses, and arrived at the conclusion that we are subhuman. So that's why they just feel comfortable talking about Zessa bills and calling people cockroach and pests and them kind of things. So, right? And that's because it feeds into the narrative of people being subhuman. So people who are full humans being subhuman, and it is okay to exploit them because they are subhuman. And there are lots of different ways to exploit people. Enslavement is one way to exploit people. Another way to exploit people is to have them dealing up with minimum wage. So there are lots of ways to exploit people. Lots of ways to exploit people. So that's number 3, right? Create a religion or ideology around your system, right? Around your get-rich-quick scheme. And once you have an ideology or a religion that your get-rich-quick scheme built around, you're good to go. I've seen a lot of the evangelical churches use it here with they have this they have a wealth gospel thing that it is be promoting from time to time. Me not time for that. I just stay real far from religion. Generally, I hear religion as being hold up. No, that's not for me. The next step in our Get Rich Quick program is to use members of your group. I want to be able to find the right picture here. You have to use members of your group to create laws and to enforce laws. Do I have just now? Where the image, boy? How me had that image? That image critical. Just now. Give me a second. Let me pull it up. Because this is an important image. How I go and have this? How I go and have this image? Only give me a second. It will come up huge. So you must have people who could make laws and enforce laws on your side. Right? If you don't have people who could make laws and enforce laws on your side, then you'll have a problem, because the thing is, once you have started your exploitative get-rich-quick scheme, you have to enshrine it in law. You have to make sure that it is cast in stone, legislatively sound. Is a situation where people can't come and test it, people can't contest it, because it is the law. And then once it becomes the law, you need to have people who can enforce that law for you. So if as a group, you set up yourself as this group, you want to make sure that you can control the people who make the laws, and you can also control the people who enforce the laws. And when you are in that position where you, A, have set up an organization that you're running for life, and things passing down from generation to generation, inheritance from, heir to heir to heir to heir, and 2, you have found resources that are not your own that you can exploit. 3, you have structured a philosophy, an ideology, a religion around it. Thereafter, you've got to make sure that you create laws, enshrine laws, and enforce the laws. Now, how the laws get enshrined and enforced has to be done in a very selective way. So people within your group, the laws don't apply to them. That's not who the laws will ever apply to. The laws apply to everybody else outside of your group, because that's how you continue to maintain control of the resources that aren't yours, that you are exploiting. Stay with me here, folks. We getting, we warming up in our process. So once you are entirely certain about how you are going to exploit these resources that are not yours, you sit down, you make the laws, but you ensure that the laws do not ever apply to you. The laws apply to everybody else, and everybody else must be enforced. And anybody else who appears to look like, especially people who are subhuman, right? All of the people that you have decided and deemed as subhuman, the minute they're looking to jump out themselves and demand better working conditions, demand better salaries, and demand that you stop exploiting them, enforce the law on them, and ensure that you find the appropriate words to describe them. So cockroaches, pests, and zessas. That's how you go about making sure that your system of laws work to support and promote you in your get-rich-quick scheme, right? And as much as possible, create as many loopholes for yourself. Because remember, because you've attached this thing, you've linked this thing to a religion and an ideology, you want to appear, at the very least, as if you are following the very laws that you have set up for yourself, right? But you must always have a get-out-of-jail card and a loophole that allows you to not ever have to actually be answerable for any of the things that you have said, you for yourself, set up and say, this is illegal, right? Good. Everybody following me thus far? We good? We going? Right. So then, the next step now is to make land ownership a requirement for entrance into this club. You must have land ownership, a requirement for entrance into this club. But the trick is this. When you have land ownership as a requirement for entrance into the club, you must make land as inaccessible and as expensive as possible. Because you grasp and you understand that land is a resource that will allow people to become independent. And let me explain what I mean by that. Land can be used for shelter. That's the first thing, right? So you have land, and land can be used for shelter. When you have land that can be used for shelter, nobody could charge your rent or necessarily charge your mortgage if you own that land outright. That's the first thing. The next thing that you could use the land for is to grow your own food. Imagine you in a situation where you could get up when the day come, spend a few hours to grow your own food, and suddenly, what is even a high-low? What is even a true value? What is even a corner shop? Because the land that you're living on providing you with shelter and with sustenance. And thereafter, that same piece of land that you're on, that providing you with shelter and that providing you with sustenance, is that same land you could also use as collateral. You could take that land and go to a lending institution if you feel like it and use part of the land or all of the land as collateral. So you have to make sure that not any and everybody could have access to this land, because what you're going to do if you have decided that you want to run a get rich quick a get rich quick scheme, you want to run a monopoly in terms of all of the resources in the country, and subhumans, right, these pests and cockroaches owning land, and owning land to the point where they could be self-sufficient. So if you in a position where you need these people to be buying your food items, to be buying things from you all the time, your building supplies, this, that, and the other, and they may need you for nothing because they had the land, they put up their structure on the land, and they're eating off, they're able to feed themselves off that land. What going to become of you? How are I going to get rich quick? How? And how am I going to be able to keep all of that resource for myself and keep it within my family? And that is where making land inaccessible to you becomes important, right? That is where it becomes real important. So that is number 5, right? Make land ownership a requirement for access into the wealth club, but also make it so expensive and so difficult to get onto that that can't happen. The next thing is ensure that I feel like I need some licks. I have a couple of things that I forgot to pull up here, so I'm gonna have to pull it up now. Sorry people, sorry. Ensure that you control the labor force. You had to control the labor force. If you ain't controlling the labor force, if you're not controlling where they're working, how they're working, and how much they're working for, when you finally decide that you are going to pay them for the work that they're doing, then how on earth are you going to get rich? Because you see, it's real important. It is not enough that you spot resources and you exploit the resources and claim the resources for yourself. You have to get other people to work the resources for you. And if you could get other people to exploit the resources for you free of charge, then even better, right? Much better. Kareem, you may need to raise the volume on your end because the volume is fine on my end. All right. So you have to control labor, and you have to control labor costs, and you have to make sure that at no point in time labor jump out themselves and do and ask and demand for more than you are willing to give them. And so this is why, and this is when people who are employees and who are workers need to stop and start asking yourself, what is an hour of your life worth to you, not to your employer? Because your employer done tell you already, based on the salary that you all negotiated, your employer has already told you what 1 hour of your life is worth to them. You now have to start asking yourself, what is that 1 hour worth to you? That's the question, some of the questions you need to ask yourself. So that's step number 5. Making sure step number 6, making sure that you control the labor force and that you control salaries and you control all of the things related to labor, like work conditions, etc., etc., etc. So that is that. Next thing now, and this is very important, control education. And controlling education is important. You have to make formal education a requirement for access into the club. As in, if you want to be able to work, you have to be educated. And so everything linked, right? To be able to work, you had to be educated. To be able to buy the land, you had to be working. So you had to be educated to be able to work, to be able to buy the land. Make sure all of those things are tied to each other. And when you have all of those things tied to each other, then make sure that you underfund the education system or create a class hierarchy within the education system where you ensure that private education or quasi-private education gets better resourced and dealt with in a different way, so that way the children who are in a public education system are underserved and the children that are in a private or quasi-private education system are dealt with much better. And you also ensure that the same hierarchy system that you established when you were creating your club, when you were creating your organization, you have that same hierarchy system attached to your education system, because you are using your education system to make sure that your mutual admiration society, your little mass club, you want to ensure that the same class, color, gender, ethnicity constructs that you established within your little royal family, that continues within the larger society, and you ensure that you use education as a tool to keep that in place. And one of the ways to ensure that that gets kept in place in that way is to make things like entrance examinations continue to be extremely class-based. So you want to maintain access to various levels of education. So even though the state might have introduced things like oh my goodness, the term slip out my head, universal, right? Universal education. So universal state education at the primary level and at the secondary level and at the tertiary level. You still want to make sure that you have your fingers in the pies so that you have the regular state system and you have your own quasi parallel system taking place. Because once you have that quasi parallel system taking place, it means that you can continue to exact and exert control over who gets preferential treatment. Because that's very important in this get-rich-quick scheme. You want to make sure that at all points in time, your group is protected. You also want to maintain the appearance of things being equal and things being equitable, even though you know it's not equal and it's not equitable, because wealth is not something you want everybody to have. And I want all it to be real clear on this. Nobody who trying to get rich want to see anybody else try to get rich too. That's not how things like wealth work. When Spain was funding Columbus's trips to the New World, Spain did not want any of the other European countries getting a head start and sending other people to the New World to exploit. And that's why they started to set up things like their own security and defense system to block other countries from being able to get to the New World. So that's why there was all of this fighting on the seas, right? Everybody who into pirate movies and them kind of things, so that is what you need to grasp. That the minute they decided that they were going to be dealing with resources and exploiting resources, it became very important to get their fingers involved in national security. Oh, did I just say that? Did I just say that people who exploiting resources make sure that they get themselves in the heart of and interfering with national security? Oh, jeez and H's. Rhoda, they go jam your signal again this evening, Gail. Nobody who is rich wants anybody else to get rich. One. And the minute they realize that they are getting rich, they begin to put up barriers to other persons getting rich. And part of what they do when they start putting up those barriers to other people getting rich is they begin to police things and they begin to get involved in things like security and national security. Right? So, education, that's where we at right now. You want to make formal education a requirement for access into your mutual admiration society. You want to make sure that you have all kinds of class restrictions. You want to make sure too that they have other restrictions. So you're restricting people based on geography. You're restricting people based on ethnicity, class, gender, abilities, all kinds of things. You are using to restrict people, because in restricting persons in different ways, you are ensuring that fewer and fewer persons can actually ever make it to the point where they have access to the resources that you already claim as your own that you're exploiting. Right? Remember, we're trying to get rich quick here. Next thing is this. This poor little children. The next thing is this. Control the media. Control the media as much as you can. All aspects of media. Make sure you're controlling television. Make sure you're controlling radio. Make sure you're controlling print. Make sure you're controlling social media. Control the media and ensure that you use the media to create a culture of consumption and discontent. And what you're going to do is use really nice words like ambition and aspiration and influence. But what you really want is to get people into a mindset of buy, 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 buy. You need to buy this, you need to buy that, you need to buy the other. You also want to get people in a situation where they are constantly questioning themselves, questioning their aspirations, questioning their needs, and feeling that they need to be doing a whole bunch of things that they don't need to do. You also want people to be misinformed. You're going to give them the story, but only part of the story. You're only going to give them some details. You're not going to give them proper analysis because you want to have people trapped in a particular cycle of how they perceive themselves. So imagine you're in a situation where you own several media houses or several media entities, and on those platforms you are able to put out stories, pictures, front page with headlines, captions, consistently promoting the idea of people being subhuman pests in handcuffs deserving of being in prisons, or people only being worthy of certain kinds of jobs, or constantly promoting cheap, badly made items as things that you need to have, things that you have to have in your home, right? Imagine needing to build your market base in that way. Because I'm telling you this, if you're looking to get rich quick, it is not enough that you get resources and you exploit the resources. You also have to make the people under you into resources. Because if you living in a country and you in the top 1.1% and you manage to get the other 99% or 98.9% to be dependent on you all the time, you had to keep them in a cycle of discontent and need and having to buy and never feeling satisfied, right? Never feeling satisfied. And you want to make sure at all points in time that you promote certain kinds of images. So you want to also be in charge of advertising agencies, because those advertising agencies will be building the ads that go into your newspapers. So when the ad agencies building the ads that going into your newspapers, they are very careful to ensure that it's only particular types of images get put into those ads that then get put on your pages that then get published, right? Take one step out of your house right now, all of you, right? One step out of your house right now, and it's billboards everywhere. Radios might be on, and the radios themselves blaring ads. Television as well, blaring ads. Why? Because corporations need you to buy. People who making things need people to be buying things. And I'm not saying that buying is a bad thing, but when you are under a compulsion to buy, when there are subliminal messages everywhere making you buy, right? You need to keep that in mind. And there are a number of things. Did I put those things up? Yeah, man. It's no, I need to close something. No, not that one. Where is it? Boy, I really need some links. I put a whole set of things in a folder. In any case, back to the point that I'm making. So you make sure that you control media. And in controlling media, you are in a position to play with people's minds, control people's instincts, control people's impulses at all points in time. And what you're then doing, and this is step 9, you are keeping the cycle of controlling resources and creating need going. So that's what you're doing. Your 9th step, keep that cycle of controlling resources and creating need going over and over and over again. And once you've done that, folks, you have gone through my 9-step program for how to get rich or kill people trying. Perfection. Absolute perfection. So in those 9 easy steps, you too could be like this guy in my poster. Because this guy in my poster, I'm pretty certain if you ask him, will tell you that it is through hard work and sacrifice that he got to where he got to. that he came here and he just worked really, 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 really hard. And that is a situation where clearly me, people who look like me, and my family didn't work hard. We didn't have ambition now. We don't really think about business the same way he could think about business. And so because we don't work hard and we don't sacrifice the way he would have worked hard and sacrifice, we're not ambitious, and that's why we can't be prosperous and wealthy. And you know what I'll tell you? Bullshit. I am yet to meet any entrepreneur or any wealthy entrepreneur. Let me put that there. I have yet to meet any wealthy entrepreneur in Trinidad and Tobago that has made money through hard work and sacrifice. I have met people, notice I'm not saying entrepreneurs, I have met people who have made tons of money in this country from lining up by the treasury, from greasing people's hand, and from making sure that their clique, their group, who was controlling resources several hundred years ago, continue to exert an exact influence on governments of today to be able to keep their hands on resources. Right? So, last week we talked about poverty and the various things, the various factors that contribute to poverty. Today we talk about how people just get wealthy. At some point in time, I am going to talk about why they want to be able to monopolize all business in this country. Why they have their eyes on WASA, why they have their eyes on privatization of many other parts of the state in order to be able to perpetuate their get-rich-quick schemes. Okay? So, on behalf of line 13, I want to bid you all a good evening. Thank you very much for joining with me and keeping my company here this evening. And I will see you guys on Friday, right? So you all have yourselves a good evening. I hope it was interesting. I hope it was useful.
They say invest, get your money in show.